You believe morality is the foundation of everything that matters, but you're the person who keeps getting stepped on because of these beliefs. And that's the contradiction nobody wants to talk about. Every single day, you're told that playing fair, being honest, and keeping your word, these things will set you free and bring you success. Your parents taught you this. School reinforced this everywhere. Religion promises this in every teaching. The entire cultural narrative rests on one unshakable assumption: that being good is the pathway to getting what you want. But here's what you need to understand by the end of this. You'll see exactly why the most powerful people in history never believed this for a second. You'll discover what they understood about human nature that you were never taught. And most importantly, you'll learn how to navigate a world that punishes idealism while rewarding ruthless strategy without losing yourself in the process. So why does this matter to you right now? Because you're living in a system designed by people who abandoned morality the moment power was threatened. And if you don't understand the rules they're actually playing by, you'll keep losing to them. Here's the paradox that splits your worldview wide open. The people who lecture you most passionately about ethics, the politicians, the CEOs, the influencers, are the exact same people practicing the opposite behind closed doors. They speak the language of morality in public because saying the right words keeps people compliant and predictable. But in the rooms where real decisions happen, in the spaces where power actually shifts, morality is treated as a liability, not an asset. Niccolò Machiavelli wasn't the first to notice this. He was simply the first to say this out loud without apology. In the 15th century, while everyone around him was performing virtue, he picked up his pen and wrote something scandalous: that morality isn't a universal truth written into the fabric of the universe. Rather, morality functions as a luxury. Only the powerless can afford to practice virtue, and only then because they have no choice. Think about the implications of that statement for a moment. This doesn't say that morality is evil or that you should abandon your values. This says something far more disturbing: that morality and power operate on completely different frequencies. They rarely occupy the same space. And the moment you understand this gulf between what you've been taught and what actually works, everything changes. But here's where danger emerges. Once you understand that the game everyone plays has hidden rules that contradict the official rulebook, you're forced to make a choice. Do you keep playing by rules you now know are designed to keep you weak? Or do you learn the real game? This is what Machiavelli understood that shaped centuries of power dynamics. This is what separates the people who shape the world from the people who simply live in existence. And this is what you're about to discover: not to become ruthless or abandon all decency, but to finally understand the landscape you're actually moving through. The question that haunts you isn't whether morality matters. The question is, in a world where the powerful have abandoned morality, can you afford to be the only one left clinging to values? And more urgently, what happens if you're finally ready to learn the difference between playing the game and understanding the game? That answer is waiting for you in what comes next. Here's what nobody tells you. The belief that morality should guide your life isn't some timeless truth that fell from the heavens. Someone invented this idea. Someone sold you on this concept. And they did so at exactly the moment when compliance became useful to keep certain people obedient while others seized power. Go back 500 years. That time was burning with ambition. Men were clawing toward power, forming alliances, breaking them, murdering rivals in the street without hesitation or apology. That time was beautiful, yes, but brutal in ways your sanitized history books refuse to acknowledge. Power in that world had one simple rule: whatever works. Then Machiavelli arrived, not as a moralist, but as a realist. He watched the princes and the powerful operate without the burden of ethical restraint. He saw that the men climbing highest weren't the virtuous ones. They were the ones willing to do what others wouldn't. They were the ones who understood that mercy was a weakness only the weak could afford to advertise. Honesty was a tool to deploy strategically. Loyalty meant nothing when power was at stake. And here's where psychology enters the picture. The human brain is wired for social cooperation. We evolved in small groups where reputation mattered because everyone knew everyone. In that environment, being honest actually worked. Your word was your survival mechanism. But scale that system up. Throw thousands of people into a complex hierarchy where most will never meet you. Suddenly, the rules change. The brain that evolved for village life now operates in a world where your actions have no visible consequences to the people you harm. Distance creates permission. Abstraction creates freedom. Machiavelli grasped this before psychology had names for these mechanisms. He understood that humans are fundamentally tribal creatures, and we operate on two entirely different moral systems depending on who's in your circle and who's outside. When someone is in your group, you treat them with restraint. When they are distant, faceless, unknown, the restrictions dissolve. This is why the CEO can cut 10,000 jobs to raise the stock price without losing sleep. Those people aren't real to him. They are numbers on a spreadsheet. They exist in a different moral universe. The second layer is even darker. Most people operate with what psychologists call motivated reasoning. You don't think you're hypocritical. You genuinely believe your own justifications. When you do something ruthless, your brain immediately generates a story about why that action was actually necessary, actually ethical, actually the right choice given the circumstances. And here's the psychological trick. You don't feel like you're lying to yourself. The rationalization feels like truth. Machiavelli recognized this too. He wasn't describing what the powerful consciously think. He was describing the unconscious architecture of human motivation. The powerful person doesn't see themselves as immoral. They see themselves as someone who understands reality better than the naive masses clinging to fantasy. They are not evil, they are enlightened. Society needs people to believe in morality. The shared ethical norms are the glue that holds large groups together. Without these values, civilization fragments into chaos. But the people at the top understand something that the people below them don't. The rules are for the masses. The moment you have power, the rules renegotiate themselves. They become suggestions, guidelines, things that apply to other people but not to you, not because you're a bad person, but because you're in a position where normal rules don't apply to someone of your status. And by understanding what Machiavelli saw, you'll gain the clarity to recognize who's actually running the game and how they are playing, knowledge that changes everything about how you move through the world. This is the psychological machinery underneath power. This is why the virtuous person struggles while the ruthless one advances. Not because the universe rewards cruelty, but because the person willing to operate without moral restraint has unlocked an advantage that ethical constraints systematically deny to everyone else. They've removed the governor from their own engine. But understanding this creates its own kind of crisis. Once you see how the machinery works, you can't unsee the ways you've been limiting yourself by playing by rules nobody powerful actually follows. The question becomes, what do you do with this knowledge? In this exact moment, you're operating under a handicap you don't even recognize. And that blindness is costing you more than you realize. The unseen consequence of believing in universal morality is that you've internalized a governor. A psychological brake system installed so deep in your consciousness that you experience this as your own conscience, your own values, your own authentic self. But here's the brutal truth. While you're restraining yourself out of principle, the people around you are doing no such thing. They're just better at hiding their actions. Look at any competitive environment, business, politics, academia, even relationships. The consistent pattern is always the same. The person who's willing to stretch the truth advances faster. The person who'll throw a colleague under the bus gets promoted before the honest player who did the same quality work. The entrepreneur who cuts corners captures market share while the ethical competitor goes under. And the fascinating part, most people explain this away. They say the unethical person just got lucky, or was smarter, or had better connections. They can't accept the simpler explanation. The unethical person removed a constraint that everyone else is still wearing. This operates on a neurological level you're not consciously aware of. Your brain is constantly running cost-benefit analyses. When you consider taking an action that violates your moral code, your brain's fear center fires up. You feel anxiety, shame, and guilt. Your body experiences this as genuine danger. So you don't take the action. You talk yourself out of doing what might advance you. And in doing so, you've voluntarily reduced your own options in a competitive landscape where other people are not reducing theirs. Meanwhile, people without strong moral restraints experience a completely different neurological reality. When they consider the same action, there's no amygdala spike. There's no shame response. There's just a simple calculation. Does this benefit me? If yes, do so. If no, don't. No psychological suffering. No internal conflict. No sleepless nights. Just action and consequence. The subtle power of this is staggering. You're experiencing a constant internal struggle that the other person simply doesn't have. You're running on an older operating system while they've updated theirs. And because this happens below conscious awareness, you never realize you're at a disadvantage. You just keep wondering why you seem to get stuck at certain points while others keep advancing. But there's a deeper layer. Society has structured everything to reinforce this. Every institution, education, law, media, is built on the assumption that people will restrain themselves morally. Schools teach ethics. Laws punish violations. But all of these are designed as external reinforcements for something that should already be happening internally. They are redundant safety systems for people who've already internalized the break. Here's what this means practically. The system assumes you'll police yourself so effectively that external enforcement barely needs to function. And you police yourself relentlessly. Meanwhile, the people smart enough to resist that internalization just play the external game. They follow the laws, the ones that have real enforcement. They obey the rules when they're actually being watched. But everything else in the gray zone where enforcement is unlikely, that's where they operate without restraint. And here's where the psychological conditioning gets truly insidious. Society isn't just telling you to be moral. Society is telling you that morality is noble. Society is telling you that the ethical choice is the brave choice. That integrity is the highest virtue. That you should be proud of your restraint. So not only are you handicapping yourself, you're being told to feel good about your own limitation. You're being told to take pride in your restraint. This is the invisible cage. And the person running the system doesn't need bars because you've agreed to carry the weight yourself. You've accepted the premise that virtue is something to aspire toward. And in a competitive world where others have abandoned that premise, virtue becomes your chains. The consequences are everywhere once you start looking. The person with strong ethics works harder and earns less. The person without ethics takes shortcuts and builds wealth faster. The honest person gets betrayed because they assume others operate by the same code. The ruthless person advances because they assume nothing and expect betrayal at every turn. The ethical person is shocked when they discover deception around them. The unethical person is shocked when anyone actually keeps their word. This cascading system of disadvantage compounds over years and decades. Early in life, the difference might seem small. But by the time you're 40 or 50, you'll look around and wonder why the people with lower standards somehow ended up with higher status, more money, more influence. The gap between where you are and where you could have been will be staggering. And by recognizing these unseen consequences, you can finally stop blaming yourself for struggles that were engineered into the system from the start, and start making different choices. This is the hidden cost nobody calculates when they decide to play by the rules. They think morality is free. They think virtue has no price. But everything has a price. Some prices are just invisible until paying a different one becomes too late. Now comes the part they don't want you to understand. Because once you grasp this, the game changes completely. The first shift is the hardest one to make, and the shift is entirely psychological. You have to stop treating morality as an absolute and start treating virtue as a tool. This doesn't mean becoming a ruthless monster. This means recognizing that morality, like every other human invention, serves a purpose. And purposes change depending on context. Machiavelli understood something that modern self-help culture completely misses. Different situations call for different approaches. The virtue that makes you a good friend makes you a bad negotiator. The honesty that builds trust in intimate relationships destroys you in competitive environments where people are actively working against you. The loyalty that makes you reliable makes you exploitable. These aren't character flaws. They are mismatches between your operating system and your environment. So here's what breaking free actually looks like, abandoning the idea that you must be consistent. You can be deeply ethical with people who've earned your trust. You can be ruthlessly pragmatic with systems and people actively trying to exploit you. The key is knowing which category you are in at any given moment, and most people never develop this skill because they are taught that consistency is a virtue. But consistency is a trap. Consistency is the mark of someone who hasn't figured out that different games have different rules. A chess player doesn't use the same strategy in the endgame that they used in the opening. A soldier doesn't treat a negotiation the same way they treat combat. A parent doesn't parent a 5-year-old the same way they parent a teenager. Context matters. And yet you've been trained to apply the same moral framework to every situation, every person, every interaction. Breaking free means developing what you might call strategic flexibility. Before every major decision, ask yourself, what is this situation actually asking of me? What rules are really in play here? Who am I actually dealing with? Are they playing the game I think they are playing, or are they operating by a completely different rulebook? This is where observation becomes your most valuable skill. Most people are too busy broadcasting their own intentions to notice what others are actually doing. But if you start watching, you'll see the patterns. You'll see who's ruthless and who's pretending to be moral while acting ruthlessly. You'll see who's honest because they trust you and who's honest because they haven't figured out how to manipulate the situation yet. You'll see the difference between genuine ethics and performed ethics. And once you can see these patterns, you can respond appropriately. When you encounter someone operating with genuine ethics, you can be direct and honest with them. When you encounter someone performing ethics while acting ruthlessly, you don't need to match their ruthlessness. You just need to stop assuming their words tell you anything about their actual intentions. You need to watch their actions instead. Here's the practical rebellion. Stop letting other people's moral claims determine your behavior. When someone tells you they are honest, don't assume that means they won't lie to you in a situation where doing so benefits them. When someone tells you they are loyal, don't assume they won't abandon you the moment you become a liability. When someone tells you they operate with integrity, understand that they might, until the pressure gets high enough that they don't. This sounds cynical, but actually, the approach is clarity. You're seeing the world as actions show it truly operates instead of as you've been told to believe regarding values. And from that clarity, you get freedom. The freedom comes from releasing the expectation that everyone around you is playing by the same rules you are. Once you stop expecting universal morality, you stop being shocked by betrayal. Once you stop being shocked, you stop being blindsided. Once you stop being blindsided, you stop being manipulated. And that's when your actual power begins. Machiavelli's real insight wasn't that you should be ruthless. His insight was that you should be conscious. Be aware of what you're doing and why. Make deliberate choices instead of following scripts other people wrote for you. Understand that every action has a cost and a benefit, and you're the one who gets to decide if the trade is worth making. This is where you reclaim agency. Not by becoming immoral, but by becoming strategic about systems that were never moral to begin with. When you're negotiating a salary with a corporation that makes billion-dollar profits partly by underpaying workers, your negotiation isn't immoral, their offer is. You're not being ruthless by asking for fair compensation. You're being naive if you don't. When you're competing for an opportunity with someone who'll lie to get it, your refusal to lie isn't virtue, it's self-sabotage. The rebellion means understanding that the moral rules apply differently depending on who you're dealing with. Apply them fully with people who deserve them. Apply them strategically with people who are proving they won't reciprocate. And most importantly, stop judging yourself for making different choices in different contexts. That's not hypocrisy. That's evolution. By mastering this shift from blind morality to conscious choice, you'll finally operate with the same freedom that powerful people have always enjoyed, while maintaining your own integrity in the relationships and situations where such values actually matter. The question isn't whether you should abandon morality. The question is whether you should abandon the demand that everyone else follow a moral code while you punish yourself for every violation you consider. You're standing at a threshold. On one side is everything society tells you. On the other side is what actually works. And you're about to discover that the real victory isn't on either extreme. You'll find what you seek by understanding both and choosing consciously between them. Here's the ultimate truth that changes everything. Morality was never the problem. Unconsciousness was. The real difference between powerful people and powerless people isn't that one group has ethics and the other doesn't. Both have values. The difference is that powerful people know which situations demand which ethics, and powerless people apply the same moral framework to everything and wonder why they keep losing. Think about the most successful people you know. Not the ones who became successful by crushing others. The ones who built real empires, real influence, real lasting power. Watch them carefully. They are selective. They are generous with people in their inner circle. They are ruthless with competitors. They are honest in situations where honesty builds trust. They are strategic with information when sharing would undermine their position. They are not hypocrites, they are conscious. And that consciousness is what you've been missing. Machiavelli's real genius wasn't in telling you to abandon morality. His genius was in telling you to abandon the illusion that the world operates on a single moral standard. Once you accept that reality, everything shifts. You stop being shocked by betrayal. You stop being surprised when people act in self-interest. You stop judging yourself for making pragmatic choices. And most importantly, you stop being played by people who understand the game better than you do. But here's where profound understanding emerges. The people who truly win at navigating power aren't the ones who become purely ruthless. Those people build empires, yes, but they live in constant paranoia. Everyone around them is also ruthless. Everyone is a threat. They can never truly trust anyone. They live in a fortress of their own making. That's not power, that's a prison with a view. The actual victory looks different. Someone who can be completely trustworthy with their inner circle, ruthlessly pragmatic with competitors, and strategically honest with everyone else. Someone who has genuine friendships because they can be fully authentic in those relationships. Someone who wins negotiations because they understand what the other person actually needs instead of what they claim to need. Someone who builds real loyalty because they know when to reward such devotion and when to recognize when others are proving they won't reciprocate. This is the freedom you've been unconsciously seeking. Not freedom from morality. Freedom from the tyranny of applying morality universally. Freedom to be fully human in different contexts. Freedom to stop judging yourself for making different choices in different situations. And here's where everything transforms. Once you have this freedom, you don't actually need to be ruthless as often as you think. Because ruthlessness comes from scarcity. When you're desperate, you resort to anything. When you're conscious and strategic, you realize that most people respond to being treated well. Most people reciprocate trust if they believe you're trustworthy. Most situations can be won through understanding and intelligence instead of deception and cruelty. The real power move is knowing you could be ruthless if you needed to, and choosing not to because you've found better ways to advance. That's the difference between a tyrant and a leader. That's the difference between someone who dominates through fear and someone who influences through understanding. Machiavelli understood this too, though people rarely read deeply enough to grasp this complexity. He wasn't advocating for cruelty's sake. He was saying, understand that the rules are different at different levels of power. Use that understanding. Don't be naive. Don't be a victim of a system you don't understand. But also don't become so afraid of being exploited that you exploit everyone first. The ultimate realization is this: you've been taught to believe that success requires sacrificing your ethics. That's a lie designed to keep you small. But you've also been taught that ethics should be applied universally and without exception. That's a different lie designed to keep you powerless. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Ethics are real and valuable, but they are also contextual. And the moment you understand that context, you gain a freedom most people never experience. You can be a good person and a strategic person. You can have integrity and still advance. You can be trustworthy with people who deserve your trust and protect yourself from people who don't. You can build genuine relationships and still navigate competitive environments. You don't have to choose between being moral and being powerful. You just have to be conscious about which one applies in which moment. This is the final promise. By embracing this ultimate truth, you'll stop being a victim of a system you didn't understand, and you'll become someone who moves through that system with full consciousness, intentional power, and genuine freedom. You'll stop struggling against invisible forces and start dancing with them. You'll stop being played and start playing deliberately. You'll discover that the greatest power of all isn't the power to dominate others. Power is understanding them well enough to know when to collaborate, when to compete, and when to simply walk away. The game was never about morality versus immorality. The game was always about consciousness versus unconsciousness. And now you're finally awake.